and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are with our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective. It's time for Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla. Stay tuned for insights, impact, and inspiration right here on Channel Africa. Available on the Channel Africa app.
Well, a very good evening and welcome to Africa World Hour. This is Channel Africa. Stay connected to Africa and the world with Channel Africa, the international voice of the South African Broadcasting Corporation. Watch or listen anytime, anywhere at channelafrica.co.za on the Channel Africa mobile app and on SABC Plus or via the DSTV and OpenView audio bouquet. You can also catch us on social media at Channel Africa on Facebook and Channel Africa 1 on all platforms. And of course, Channel Africa first with the African story globally. I'm Unathi Batyashe in for Tsepiso Makwetla. Let's begin with just giving you a sense of today's top stories.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
Well, South Africa's former International Relations and Cooperative Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, has warned that while Africa may be politically liberated from colonial rule, it remains tightly constrained by neo-colonial pressures, deep poverty, and governance shortcomings that undermine the promise of democracy. Pandor was addressing delegates at the National Conference on Human Rights, Border Management, and Responsible Migration hosted by the South African Human Rights Commission in Johannesburg.
Africa is free of colonialism and severely constrained by neocolonialism and by its failure to derive positive value from democracy and freedom. Africa is a very wealthy continent, and yet it is drowning from poverty and is occupied by agile citizens who desire prosperity and who are struggling to combat severe poverty. So these are the constraints in which we have to give effect to the dictates of the Refugee Convention.
Well, staying in South Africa, where member of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Justice and Constitutional Development, Glynis Breitenbach, has called for Justice and Constitutional Development Minister Mamoloko Kubai to account for the deteriorating conditions at the Alexandra Magistrates Court in Johannesburg. Now, she says the situation is undermining access to justice after several matters had to be postponed due to power outages at the court. The case of Bellarmine Mugabe, the son of Zimbabwe's late former President Robert Mugabe, has been postponed for the second time due to power outages in the very same court. Now, Breitenbach says that the committee should urgently summon the minister to address ongoing infrastructure failures at the court.
It's quite disappointing. As I stated on Tuesday, we've been ready to proceed. We've been ready to proceed as far back as Monday last week, but of course, we understand these things are out of our hands. We had spoken to the prosecution with regards to the procession of this matter, and it seems that at this stage, we will be back in court on Wednesday next week. we hope that, of course, the electricity will be restored at that point.
All right, other top stories we are tracking for you. Conservative Anglicans meeting in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, have pulled back from creating a new leader with the same authority as the Archbishop of Canterbury. Now, instead, they created a new council headed by a Rwandan cleric, Dr. Laurent Mbanda. Many conservatives are unhappy with the church installing its first woman, Archbishop of Canterbury, Sarah Mellely. Now, later this month, the BBC's Justin Murph is the group's spokesperson.
The issue is not same-sex marriage, nor is it about the female archbishop. It is whether scripture or contemporary culture governs the life of this church. The reordering recovers the original Anglican structure, a fellowship of independent provinces under scripture, free from colonial, Canterbury-centered history.
Well, further afield, Britain's Interior Minister has announced that from June, asylum seekers will have government support withdrawn if they have the right to work or if they're found to be working illegally. The Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, also confirmed a pilot scheme whereby families whose asylum claims are rejected would be offered up to $53,000 to leave the country voluntarily.
Should these incentives prove effective, they will represent a significant saving to the taxpayer. Where a voluntary removal is refused, we will escalate to an enforced removal for those who can be returned to their safe home country. We are now consulting on precisely how the removal of families with children must take place in a way that is humane and effective.
All right, now to Gabon. The Gabonese High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Rodriguez Rembendambia, says Gabon is prioritizing regional integration and economic transformation as part of reforms under its new political dispensation. Speaking to Channel Africa, Rembendambia said that the country's Fifth Republic, led by Bryce Ngwema, is focusing on local processing of natural resources, agricultural self-sufficiency and improved social services following recent political reform.
It's very important to Gabon. We are working hard with other countries, our neighbors in the Central African region to make sure that, the issue of integration is dealt with. Many reforms, in the framework of Central Africa region have been made to make sure that, for example, there's not too many constraints to facilitate the circulation of people in the Central African region. You can go from Cameroon, from Yaoundé to Libreville, from Malabo to Libreville easily. This is, we are removing the barriers, that can still be there to facilitate. So Gabon is doing well in terms of, regional integration. We are there, we are participating, we are pushing as far as we can to make that dream come true. Yeah.
And looking at Gabon has gone through painful past, and it's on the path of recovery in terms of both political and also economic. You just came out of the elections last year. I think it has been popularly known as the Fifth State or
Fifth Republic. Yeah.
Fifth Republic,
yeah.
Yes. Take us through some of the, expected changes and reforms that your government, the current government now, is trying to install.
Of course, as you said, we went through a very difficult path 1, 2, 3 years ago. Some changes happened in Gabon. We went through a political transition. Finally, we organized presidential elections last year, and a new leadership under the leadership of President Oligui Nguema was elected last year by 95% of the voting. The people really was a plebiscite for President Oligui Nguema. We also organized, elections of the Senate, elections of the National Assembly. So we are now under the fifth, of course, as you said, Fifth Republic, and the president is there for 7 years to transform the country. What are the expectations for the people of Gabon? We want, for example, to locally transform our raw materials. This is a decision that has been taken by the president, so that from now now to 2029, we are able to transform locally the minerals of Gabon, manganese, gold, iron, and many others, instead of exporting them, without adding any value to that. This is very important, and we are working on that. Recently, I was with the Minister of Mine attending the mining in Daba in Cape Town. Very good contacts have been made, and we hope, we think there is something to be done there, because the transformation, the locally processing of raw material is going to add not only, of course, a value to our minerals, but also bring opportunities for the youth of our country. We are, the President is also pushing for, in the agricultural sector, from now to 2027, we are no longer going to import the chicken meat. We are now working to make sure that we have the plants necessary to have those, chicken meat at home, so that, we add value to that and we also create jobs.
Of course, the people on the ground are the ones that have to feel the impact, and it starts with social services in terms of access to education, that is, but also the healthy care and many other social issues. How is the government looking at such issues?
Yes, you're right. In narrating the past, President and his team are working hard to make some changes and real impact to the lives of the Gabonese. I would say everything is important today. Everything is a priority in Gabon today. System. New schools are built. Professors are integrated in the administration system. Recently, we had some tensions on the education level, but the President and his team have managed to appease tensions by talking truly to the teachers, to the education community. So we, of course, the Gabonese understand, and we really understand that we want everything right now. But as you know, reforms take time. That's what we are trying to explain. That, we understand you, we hear you, but, let's go step by step. And the President is himself involved in that. There is the political will to change things. This is in the education system, but it's the same for all, all different sections of the administration. Healthcare, as you said, we want to make sure that Gabon and Gabonese people can go to the hospital in their own country instead of, traveling that far to see a doctor, to see a specialist. So there is a lot of not only buildings, infrastructure, very important. Also, we're looking at the human capital because, we need doctors, we need more specialists to do that. We are also making sure that the environment for all these people is a decent environment. Housings are built, their own situation as a civil servant is being looked at. So, Gabon right now is a very vast project.
All right, that was the Gabonese High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador Rodrigue Rembendambia, speaking there to Channel Africa's Michael Mbewe. All right, so let's take you to this now. As South Africa marks a Human Rights Month, organizations are raising concern about the state of childhood in the country. Save the Children South Africa has launched its Right to Children and Protection campaign, calling for urgent action to address violence, hunger, and the neglect affecting children. Now, the organization says protecting children must become a national priority and is also urging communities, leaders, and the public to play a role in safeguarding children's rights. Our reporter Lebogang Mabange has more for us on the story.
As South Africa reflects on human rights and the values of dignity, equality and justice, child rights organizations say many children are still being left behind. Megan Bride, Director of Programs at Save the Children South Africa, says the campaign is meant to remind the country that children's rights are human rights.
Human Rights Month reminds us that dignity, safety, and equality are rights guaranteed to every person in South Africa, including children. Yet the reality is that many children are growing up in an environment marked by violence, hunger, and neglect. Launching the campaign now is about reminding the country that children's rights are human rights and that protecting childhood must become a national priority. We hope this campaign shifts the conversation from awareness to action.
The organization says that the challenges facing children are deeply rooted in broader social issues affecting many communities.
The main drivers behind challenges facing children in South Africa are high levels of poverty and food insecurity. This means that many children are growing up hungry, while violence in the home and communities expose them to abuse and trauma. Systems meant to protect children, like social services, are often overstretched. The result is a cycle where poverty, violence, and neglect reinforce each other and rob children of the safe childhood they deserve.
Save the Children South Africa says protecting children cannot be left to government alone and requires collective action from society.
We are calling on communities and the public to take action. Protecting children starts with everyday actions. Communities can report abuse or neglect when they see it, support families who may be struggling, and make sure children in their neighborhoods are safe and cared for. People can also support organizations working with children. Simple acts like monthly donations, joining the Woolworths loyalty program, or simply by helping amplify children's voices by talking about these issues. Child protection is not a responsibility of the government. It is a shared responsibility for all of us.
The organization hopes the campaign will spark greater public engagement and stronger commitments to protecting children across the country.
Success would mean that more South Africans are talking about this crisis facing children and recognizing that childhood must be protected. We want to see stronger public awareness, more community involvement in protecting children, and greater commitment from our leaders and businesses to prioritize child protection services and funding for this cause. If this campaign helps shift the national mindset so that violence, hunger, and neglect against children are no longer tolerated, and corporates and communities stand with and support Save the Children South Africa, then we will have taken an important step forward.
The Right to Childhood and Protection campaign will run until the end of April, with the organization encouraging South Africans to help raise awareness and take action to protect children. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebogang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Get Channel Africa on DSTV Audio Bouquet. Channel 802. When the sun goes down, we don't stop the talk. Channel Africa, the best nighttime radio.
All right, let's get into this discussion now. Somalia's bicameral parliament has approved a new constitution that replaces the provisional version in place since 2012, while Prime Minister Hamza Abdi Barre hailed the move as a historic victory for democratic stability. The amendment also extended the terms of both lawmakers and President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud from 4 to 5 years, effectively delaying scheduled elections by at least 1 year. Now, Somalia has endured conflict and clan battles with no strong central government since the fall of autocratic ruler Mohammed Siad Barre in 1991. For more on what this means, we're now joined on the line by Dr. David Matsanga, political scientist and conflict resolution specialist. Dr. Matsanga, very good evening to you, and thank you so much for your time. So the move comes amid what we, of course, seeing the political opposition, regional tensions, and, of course, the Al-Shabaab question. So how does the transition from a provisional to an official constitution impact the federal government's legal legitimacy, given, of course, that the vote was boycotted by an opposition alliance?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me on this crucial subject that I have undertaken studies on and talked about since 1991.
Yeah.
I have been one of the few people following the Somali issue. But this is the right step in the right direction. For the first time, we see some progress of Somali and the Somali government coming back to capture its own systems, to bring back institutions that can lead it to a democratic, free nation. This is a good step, but whether it will work or it is going to work is another thing. Already you see there is opposition from opposition parties. There is opposition also from other states, some of them who were not involved in the voting and taking part in wider public consultations that took place to reach this consensus. But it is, in all, a right step in the right direction towards democratization of Somalia.
Yeah. And I mean, as we've said in our introduction, Somalia has endured conflict and also, clan battles with no strong central government. So moving from a clan-based system to direct election, I would imagine is a major structural shift. How will this play out? I mean, could this reduce the influence of clan politics?
Generally, Somalia has got what we call nomadic democracy, where you don't have people standing in one place, staying in one place. You remember this democracy that moves along. But as it moves along, it has its own clan leaders, clan democracy, of consensus, democracy to say, this one is the one we want, not the other one. You will stand this time, you will stand next time, don't stand this time. So moving from this type of democracy, of the former Somalia as we knew it, is a step again in the right direction. But there is something that you have touched on, the obstacles, the challenges that will come with it, because the hardliners are not interested in moving in the direction that the government of Somalia is trying to put forward. 2, interference from external forces that are coming to fortify. They have come to fortify Somalia instead of pacifying Somalia. This is the mistake we have made. Uganda, my country, was one of the first country to arrive in Mogadishu. We've lost men and women. We have done quite a lot to pacify this region. But there are some states that are coming in now, especially Turkey, which is coming in to now to create. Egypt is coming in to create a base. Norway, all these are creating bases. People are running for bases instead of running for pacification. Pacify Somalia, then you can later on have whatever you want, the oil, the water, the gas that you are looking for.
Yeah.
But some of the states are coming with ulterior motives.
And I'm going to come to, just the geopolitical implications. But let's touch a little bit on what we're seeing from an elections perspective. So the Constitution, it promises this direct parliamentary election, yet the country still, faces a number of issues and challenges. The powerful insurgency, as we've said, from Al-Shabaab. Is the 1-year term extension a necessary move to allow for those, logistical rollouts when we start speaking about universal suffrage in terms of direct voting? Or is it, as critics claim, a strategic bid for the incumbent to entrench himself in power?
First of all, Somalia has not had elections, democratic, universal elections, suffrage, one man, one vote, since 1991. So it is very difficult to organize an election even in 1 year. You need quite a lot of logistics. You need, first of all, even we have a big obstacle. Part of the central city of Mogadishu, if it was not our Ugandan troops, Sector 1 would have fallen to the hands of Al-Shabaab. That is the truth. So if the government is asking for 1 year, I think they are very genuine in asking for 1 year. It's not putting himself in power, because You have got to get logistics to get people to come out to vote. Remember, we have a section of people in Somalia who are not interested to vote. They don't want even any vote to take place. They believe that elections are a Western Hemisphere, so-called America style of thing that was imposed on them. And that's why you see the Al-Shabaab want to create what we call an Islamic state. And that they are not very far from the capital city, Mogadishu. And they are even in Mogadishu. Yeah. They plant bombs, they kill people. So the government has the right to have 1 year, there may be even 2 years to organize an election.
Yeah, and I mean, just what are the implications, in as far as that is concerned? I mean, what is the likelihood that this standoff that we are seeing escalates into civil unrest or, even parallel political processes, particularly when we look at the fact that opposition leaders, including former presidents, including prime ministers, rejecting the amendment that we are talking about and calling for elections to proceed in May in 2026, as originally planned. That's less than 3 months' time.
Let me tell you, Somalia is already fragmented.
Yeah.
Somalia is fragmented. Somaliland has already got, or there is already people demanding a state of their own. Jubaland is already on the tenterhooks, ready to go. And I think it might be the second one to say, we are not interested in the central government in Mogadishu. So I am not surprised that most of the people who are agitating for May elections are the people who don't want, who are part of the group that says the president has stayed there for too long. But to be very honest and to be candid, it is not possible for anybody to.
Yeah. Doc, are you still with us, Dr. Matsanga? All right. It seems that Dr. Matsanga is... his signal has been lost, but thank you so much. I think we got the gist of just some of his sentiments explaining there what this new development in Somalia essentially means. Somalia's bicameral parliament approving that new constitution that replaces the provisional version in place since 2012. So many dynamics in as far as this is concerned, particularly when you take into cognizance the historical context. Somalia has not had stable nationwide democratic elections for decades, as we've also just heard there from Dr. Matsanga, that is a political scientist and conflict resolution specialist. All right, let's continue then with other news for you that we have.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
Moçambique prepara-se para a chegada do ciclone tropical Gezane, prevista para esta sexta-feira, com impacto esperado nas províncias de Sofala, Inhambane e Gaza. O fenómeno, que já causou mais de 30 mortes de destruição significativa em Madagascar, poderá atingir o litoral moçambicano, com ventos de 140 km por hora e chuvas intensas, afetando cerca de 1,1 milhão de pessoas. A aproximação do ciclone surge numa altura em que o país ainda recupera das cheias de janeiro, que provocaram dezenas de mortos e afetaram mais de 700 mil pessoas. Para fazer o ponto de situação, ouvimos Rita Almeida, diretora de Planificação e Cooperação do Instituto Nacional de Gestão e Redução de Riscos de Desastres.
As famílias devem reforçar o teto das casas, as portas e as janelas. Devem evitar fazer-se tanto à rua, devem prestar atenção sobre as orientações em relação a centros de acomodação temporário, devem preparar um kit mínimo básico com fósforos, produtos alimentares, medicamentos.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio do Canal África.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
All right, welcome back. Let's continue then to this. After 4 years on the front lines of a humanitarian crisis in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado, Medicines Sans Frontieres is packing its bags in Mueda, but for a reason that offers a rare glimmer of hope. Since 2021, MSF has been the backbone of healthcare for thousands of families fleeing conflict, providing everything from life-saving surgeries to critical mental health support. For more on what this transition means for the community and how they ensure no patient is left behind as the international teams depart, we speak now to MSF's spokesperson, Barbara Traknig. She is also the Deputy Medical Coordinator in the SADC region. Barbara, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Perhaps let's start with what specific medical or even stability milestones have been met, that triggered this decision to hand over operations to the Mozambican Ministry of Health at this particular time.
Good evening, everybody. It's always a quite big dilemma to go and to pack our bags, but it's a usual dilemma which we have with MSF in particular. Because we are an organization which is responding to health emergencies, which is always quite challenging, and especially in Mozambique, we were really working hand in hand with the Ministry of Health to ensure that we give them all the tools that they can continue the work. So we, as you mentioned, we started the work 2021 in Mueda, but not only in Mueda, as well we were working in 2 other different districts, which were the neighbors of Mueda, which is Nangade and Muidumbe, where we saw 2021 a very big influx of people which were fleeing a cost of the violence. And based on this, we saw as well that there's the big need for access to health, especially taking in consideration that a lot of health facilities were as well destroyed, and as well health workers were not there because they were fleeing as well. So that was the reason we entered 2021 in Mueda, Muidumbe and Nangade district. And then within the time, we were there 5 years, the decision was taken to hand over again to the Ministry of Health with a big plan of capacity building, on-job training, and to give really the tools to the Ministry of Health. But during the 5 years, we were working a lot with the communities, with community leaders. We were working as well with community health workers and traditional birth attendants to ensure that especially the community is aware which kind of health facilities are in their district or community, and to ensure that there's a really good referral pathway. During these 5 years, we were working as well a lot to ensure that chronic diseases are seen, especially taking in consideration HIV and TB, because as you may imagine, patients who may have to take medication on a daily basis don't have the access anymore due to the fact that the health facility where they get normally the medication were not available anymore, or they were not aware where it is. So our pharmacy team was really working together with the Ministry of Health to ensure that there's always sufficient medication available for this patient.
So Barbara, I mean, you are not just the the spokesperson of MSF, but you also take care of the SADC region as the Deputy Medical Coordinator. I would imagine there are a lot of nerves as you pull out, given that MSF has been the backbone of healthcare, as we've said there in our intro, for tens and thousands of, families in that particular region. But speak to us about, how MSF specifically has ensured also that the local healthcare system has those specialized training to maintain these specific high need services. I mean, what were some of the interventions that you needed to make, and did that take the 5 years that you spoke of earlier on?
Yeah, it for sure take 5 years because we were not doing the 5 years the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it was at the beginning we were really ensuring that the health facilities were rehabilitated together with other organizations. And as well, at the beginning we were really focusing on the interventions to ensure essential health services in the IDPs and communities were put in place again. And we started to organize mobile clinics together with the Ministry of Health. And as well, we started to rehabilitate health centers, which were dedicated to do so. During these 5 years, we were really working a lot with the Ministry of Health to ensure that they have the capacity to continue the work which we put in place. And as well, in Mueda, there are still other actors which are working for specific parts. So specific parts were handed over to other organizations.
And do you think that, from an emergency preparedness perspective, in the event, of a new wave of violence, if that were to strike Muenda, are you comfortable that in the event of any eventuality that all of those interventions will hold? I mean, questions, of course, around what emergency re-entry triggers or even contingency plans you've put in place.
Yeah, so the good thing of Doctors Without Borders is that we are really flexible and having operational flexibilities.
Yeah.
For example, there was a high influx end of September and October in Mueda. At the same time, we were closing the project Mueda, but at the same time, we put in place a team who were working for a few months in the camps where we saw a higher influx of patients. So it doesn't mean when we close now Mueda that we will never come back.
Yeah.
But we try to give as much preparedness to the Ministry of Health, who is the owner of the health system in Mozambique.
Yeah.
So,
and just from a resource perspective, I mean, how does the closure of Mueda allow you then to, redirect those resources, particularly when you look at some of the more, volatile as well as, precarious areas, frontline districts in the region particularly?
So, Doctors Without Borders is still present in Mozambique. We still have 3 projects ongoing, but one of them is in Musimbo de Praia, the other one is in Palma, and the third one is in Macomia. And currently we are having as well one emergency response in Nampula for cholera response, where we are supporting the Ministry of Health. And as well, we just closed one emergency intervention in Erati due to violence, influx of displaced population. So that's the good thing of Doctors Without Borders, because we really try to have our operational flexibility, even though we have as well projects running.
Yeah. And just from a personal accountability perspective, from your point of view, just how satisfied are you that, the interventions that have been put in place, given, also the experience that you've had over these years, that, this plan is watertight as possible?
Yeah, it's always the biggest dilemma of Doctors Without Borders is due to the fact that we are a humanitarian organization which is responding to emergencies. We are not able to continue our intervention until until this basis that we say, okay, now it's super acceptable.
Yeah.
So that's always the biggest dilemma in as well in my personal experience. And in other contexts, Doctors Without Borders is coming back after a few years due to different reasons, but then you can reconnect with what you started sometimes.
All right, Barbara, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time on the program. Barbara Tradnik is the MSF spokesperson as well as the Deputy Medical Coordinator in the SADC region. Appreciate your time on the show. All right, we continue with more news on the other side of this.
Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are. With our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you will be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Channel Africa is evolving, and so are you. Stay connected wherever you are. With our brand new website and mobile app. Stream your favorite shows, catch up on African news, culture, and conversations, all at your fingertips.
Africa is just a tap away.
Your world, your stories, now on the go.
Stay connected wherever you are.
Visit channelafrica.co.za or download the Channel Africa app today. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Get the news, music, and lifestyle of Africa on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
All right, welcome back. Let's continue to this now as global demand for African art surges with auction sales rising 43% to over $70 million. Experts are analyzing whether the continent can retain cultural and financial ownership in a globalizing market. For greater perspective on this, art advisor, founder of ISEDA, an international art advisory firm focused on the cultural stewardship of Black contemporary art, and Smithsonian National Museum of African Arts Global African Council member Adefola Fola Adenugba joins us on the line to discuss this shift following her feature on Africa.com. Fola, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Before we get to, just some of the global sales concerns, when we talk about African art today, looking at its vastness, looking at its diversity from contemporary painters, sculptures, digital artists, and photographers, the whole lot. What are some of the key trends currently shaping the African art market?
I would say some of the key trends shaping the African art market is increased interest in diasporic connections. People are more interested in work outside of figurative work. People are exploring spiritual and cultural heritage and narrative through African art. And with exhibitions such as Nigerian modernism at the Tate, there's an increased interest in what does modern African art look like and what is the history as it pertains to African modern art.
Yeah, let's talk about the topic at hand. You note that, while global sales of African art surged 43% last year, sales within Africa continue to decline. I mean, what specific policy or even infrastructure changes do you think are needed to ensure that the continent doesn't just export its best treasures?
I can't speak to policy, and I wouldn't say infrastructure changes. I would say that infrastructure is currently changing. One of the things that we're currently seeing is the growth of more galleries being built on the continent, more foundations, residencies, and museums being built. So we're currently in this moment where there's an increase of infrastructure being built on the continent. And this is supporting the fact that even on the continent in the diaspora, people want to see African art on the ground in various cities and regions. You even see diasporic artists like Yinka Shonobare having shows in Madagascar. You're seeing gallerists such as Dada Gallery opening a space instead of London, opening a space now in Lagos. So there is increased infrastructure that is currently being built. So while export is always going to be important, as it is in any art market, whether it's Africa, the diaspora, outside of Africa and its diaspora, there is increased effort in ensuring that people are coming to Africa to see art on the ground and that there are ecosystems and infrastructure in place for that to be retained.
And I mean, I would imagine that also segues quite nicely in terms of just the question and the points that have been raised about, the central question about whether Africa can retain cultural and financial ownership. I mean, in your view, what does true ownership look like in a market that is increasingly borderless and digital?
For me, I think ownership has many different levels. I think digital, especially in now 2026, it's increasingly important because having things available digitally, not necessarily to purchase, just to view, allows people to understand what is happening on the continent. So even though I'm African, I'm Nigerian, I grew up across Europe, I'm based in the US, but being able to see things digitally allows me to say, okay, I know what this artist is making. I'm going to do more research. I'm now going to take the time to travel to Marrakesh, to Lagos, or maybe to South Africa to see things in person on the ground. And what ownership also means to me is not only who owns the institutions, but also who's writing about the artwork, who is collecting the artwork. And as an art advisor to platforms such as Africa.com, as an art advisor of my own business, Isheda, that's part of the work that I also do, is ensuring that people who have the means to collect are able to own, acquire, and purchase and retain the cultural value of African and African diasporic art. So you have ownership on a written and theoretical level, ownership on who owns physical buildings and infrastructure and galleries, but also who are the curators. There are also people that help contextualize art, whether it's modern or contemporary. So whether or not they're on the continent, you see African curators in museums and institutions in Europe, in the US, and they're putting on incredible shows about African history, whether it's photography, whether it's modernism, making greater connections between Africa and its wider diaspora. So there's so many different types of ownership. It can be physical, it can be intellectual and theoretical, and all of these different types of ownership play their own role into ensuring that African art is owned and controlled and supported in a way that is beneficial to African communities on the continent. And I think we're seeing an increase of that infrastructure and ecosystem being built.
And perhaps maybe touch a little bit about or on, the role of auction houses. I mean, they also play an increasingly important role in shaping the market, as we've seen. I mean, Strauss & Co. saw 26% growth through private sales and online auctions. Just speak to us about the significance of that.
Yes, auction houses are extremely important because they represent really the secondary market. So that means when an artwork has already passed from an artist studio or a gallery to a collector, and maybe they're reselling it. So you're able to see not only works that maybe haven't been on view for the public in a while, but also seeing what is exchanging hands. And so that also helps show what growth for an African artist can look like in the future. But what I think is also really important is that with increase of private sales, you're seeing more people are looking for discretion. They want speed in transactions. And also with auctions, it's a public record. So if an artwork doesn't sell at the price that it's expected to sell, or doesn't sell at all, that's a public mark for that artist, the artwork. And that's something that can affect an artist's market over time. So I think an increase in private sales is important, and not only just for African art, you're seeing it with auction houses across the board, that there is an increase in private sales. Auction houses as a whole, once again, they tell this story, especially about the maturity of an artist's market over time. So for emerging artists, auctions tell a story of what could it be like in the future, what are people responding to, and how they're responding to African art on the secondary market in the future. But their primary focus would be primary market sales, which are for the most part private.
And let's talk about how accessible some of these artworks are, particularly to new collectors. I mean, for someone who loves art but may feel intimidated by the market, what would you say, particularly for first-time collectors who want to start, investing in African art specifically? Where should they even begin?
I'm an art advisor, and I help new collectors acquire works by African artists and artists of its diaspora. And what I always tell them to do is you always need to go and see art, whether it's art from a local gallery, a museum, whether or not you want to travel to see art, you need to develop a discerning eye for what you like and what you don't like, and understand why that is. And that's how you understand the language, you understand the relationships, the cultural, historical, socio-political, economic context around art, and that's a really good way to start. So the work that I do is I support my new collectors, both domestically and internationally, with these are the different shows that are happening when you're in your city, whether it's New York or London or even in Lagos, or if you're traveling somewhere, let me know, and I will send you exhibitions that you need to visit. But I also make available works at accessible price points. And even artists who are big names in the market, they also can make work that are accessible for new collectors. So I think that it's really important to get your feet wet, to understand and just be in community with people, work with advisors, and just start learning about art on your own terms. And that's always a good way to start. And I also say you shouldn't look at art as a financial investment. And what we say at Isheda is look at art as a cultural investment into communities, into cultural production, into the preservation of culture and of history for future generations. And that helps people not approach art as an asset class or as a stock, but to really invest in the artists themselves, the stories that they want to share with the world, whether it's personal, local, regional, diasporic, or what have you. And that's how you help cultivate discerning, intentional collectors who are dedicated to long-term institutional impact for African artists and of its diaspora.
And I want to stay with what you've just said now, particularly the institutional part. I mean, as global interest grows, how do we balance then international appreciation with the need to ensure, of course, that, African art remains rooted in African contexts?
I think it goes back to like an earlier question about this idea of also ownership.
Yeah.
So African art being accessible and legible internationally is always going to be important. But like you said, it is really important to be rooted in African context. So we need to make sure we understand and know who are the people writing about African art, how are they contextualizing it, what are the contexts that they are attributing to this artwork, and also who are the curators that are helping add artwork by African artists to this art historical record and narrative. And that's how we help and ensure that African art becomes rooted in African narratives. And with collectors, they also do play a really important role. And that's why I'm really dedicated to cultivating new Black and African art collectors, because they are going to be purchasing works by African and diasporic artists. And because of that, they may have the relationships with institutions, and they can encourage curators to come to 154, to come to Investec in South Africa, to go to different biennials like in Dakar, to say, okay, these are the artists that I think are really important and they're doing great work. And they are able to advocate for artists the same way advisors advocate for artists and collectors, and then ensure that African artists are not only appreciated internationally, but also have home-based roots as infrastructure grows on the continent.
Yeah. And just from a personal perspective, I mean, just talk to us about, and I mean, I know you've mentioned quite a number of exciting things, but what are some of the artists, movements or even mediums that you particularly think are exciting right now for both, seasoned collectors, newcomers, and, the role of partnerships that you've also spoken about in the article with the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art? I mean, how do these then Western institutional endorsements further impact, that market value?
Yeah, so one thing I think is really interesting, I'm loving that there is a resurgence of craft and textiles and ceramics around the diaspora, and it's really wonderful to see that. There are a lot of exhibitions that are also prioritizing work like that. And partnerships are increasingly important, and I think what the Smithsonian National Museum of African Art is doing is incredible. So even with the African Art in Venice Forum, partnering with African Art Dialogues and Strauss & Co. So you have an institution on the continent, institution in the US, as well as an institution that's focused on African art discourse, partnering together on a major platform and encouraging people to discuss what is currently happening with African art. It not only allows for African art and artists to increase the exposure and people engaging with their work, but I think what I really love about partnerships like that is that it's showing the importance of cross-continental partnerships and how that is necessary for African art to continue growing the way that it is. So while Western institutions can carry a lot of weight and support for helping an artist market, we're now seeing, because of these partnerships, everyone recognizes the importance of African institutions, whether it's for discourse, whether it's auction, whether it's museums or galleries, in that conversation, and this cannot happen without them. And I really love that the Smithsonian is doing a lot of work with institutions on the continent and more.
Fola, absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate your time. Ade Fola Kunmi Nugba, or Fola, as she's called, speaking us there and joining us just to discuss the shift following that feature on Africa.com. Of course, she is with the African Arts Global African Council member as well. All right, of course, we're going to be looking at what's coming up next, having discussions with Shayla in a moment, as we continue, of course, to count down to the wrap of our show. And in fact, Shayla joins us right now, coming up very shortly with African Diaries. A very good evening, Shayla. Thank you so much for joining us for that throw forward.
Awesome.
What is coming up?
Firstly, hello, Nadia. How are you?
Hi.
I don't think we've had the pleasure
Taking a breath.
Absolutely.
We have not had the pleasure.
So I'm good. Today is Talk Thursdays, and in the first hour of the show, we're going to be speaking to Tula Cindy, which I'm excited about. He's currently busy curating the Mahindra Fusion Festival that is taking place this Saturday. And so I understand that is in preps, and we're going to be chatting about that. Then in the second hour of the show, we get into the world of ballet. Right, and we're going to be speaking to Mario, and Mario is a ballet dancer as well as a senior soloist who is behind the piece Celestial Bodies, and we're going to be looking at how astrophysics, cinematic music, and science come together.
Fantastic. Sounds very exciting.
Yeah.
In fact, Tula Cindy did design my dress for my 40th birthday, so I remember that very well. So the Mahindra, what did you call it?
Mahindra Fusion Festival.
They are in absolute good hands, but thank you so much for that. Shayla and Ndikumana, they're all right, coming up shortly with African Diaries. Well, I think that brings us to an end to the show very, very quickly. But thank you so much for listening. And of course, you can catch us on all the social media platforms. You can also catch us on SABC Plus via your DSTV and OpenView audio bouquets. Also, of course, on Channel Africa on Facebook, as well as Channel Africa 1 on all of our other platforms. Well, that's a wrap from Africa World Hour. From me, Unathi Batyashe, and the rest of the team. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And of course, standing in for Tsepiso Makwetla. From us, it's good night.